It's a glorious time to be an audiophile. We have so many established brands making amazing headphones. Perhaps more importantly though, we now have some new brands entering the headphone game, but they're not joining it cold. They're coming in with a wealth of experience in audio design in the form of IEMs and other component devices too. One of these brands is Dunu, and they've done something pretty risky. They've gone from making IEMs and some component devices to making their first pair of headphones as their flagship. This is the Arashi headphone from Dunu. It looks fantastic and it costs $1,400 US. Arashi means storm or tempest in Japan, but the only thing stormy about these is the colour of the housings. These are a truly premium looking and feeling headphone. Their design would be equally as at home on a $4,000 US headphone, and that's not an exaggeration. Likewise, the unboxing experience and the accessories that come with the Arashis could easily cost twice the price, probably more in fact. You get two excellent cables in 6.3mm or 4-pin XLR termination, and at the headphone end, these are a twin 3.5mm connector. Easy, simple, and easy to replace or upgrade if you ever feel the need, but I don't think you will. And thankfully, the premium look and feel of the Arashis and their accessories continue when you put them on your head because they're super comfy as well. These are a little bit heavy at 500 grams, but they don't ever feel uncomfortable on the head, at least not for me, because of the wonderful pad and headband designs. It is worth noting though that these are definitely a desktop or lounge chair style headphone because of their size, their weight, and the sorts of cables provided. In other words, these aren't intended to be some kind of portable headphone. But that's not because they need a lot of power. Far from it, they're very easy to drive. The impedance of the drivers in the Arashis is just 26 ohms, and their sensitivity is rated at 97 decibels per milliwatt, so you can drive them from pretty much anything. They just happen to suit a desktop or lounge chair type situation because of their size, weight, and cables. They'll also reward you for listening to them in a quiet, relaxed place because they sound wonderful too. I should start with a slight caveat that the Arashis are tuned just a little bit brighter than I personally prefer, and so I tend to prefer them from a warmer, richer sounding source chain. It's not that they're harsh in the treble though, very far from it, it's just that I like a little bit less treble than what they have. The treble that they do offer though is extremely refined and well behaved though. And thanks to that, the Arashis, in my opinion, are undeniably enjoyable, despite being tuned a little bit brighter than what I personally like. And a part of that enjoyment comes from how punchy the bass is from these, despite the fact that when you look at the tuning, it's a very linear bass response. There's no sense of bass emphasis or enhancement anywhere, but you do feel the bass. Somehow, despite that very linear tuning, the bass hits in Johnny on the Monorail are weighty and impactful. They're fast and punchy, tangible even, but they're not enhanced in any way. At the same time, the upper mid-range and vocals are very crisp and clean from the Arashis, but once again, not harsh in any way. The staging from the Arashis reminds me a lot of HiFiMan headphones, and what I mean by that is they tend to stretch a lot left to right with very good width, but they don't provide a great deal of forward depth or forward projection in the sound. Of course, as always, some comparisons will help to clarify exactly how similar they are. Before I reached for the Arya Unveiled though, I was first drawn to pick up the FiiO FT7s. And before I tell you about how that comparison went, let me really quickly tell you about the sponsor of today's video. Thanks to Dakoni Audio, you can get 10% off any replacement headphone cables, headphone earpads, ear tips for IEMs, and even accessories like headphone carry cases at DakoniAudio.com. In addition to some new, cheaper pricing on Dakoni's excellent ensemble cable system that I've spoken about in some previous videos, they've also now released what I find to be a game-changing earpad. A little while ago, I reviewed the Noble Audio Focus Apollo headphones. They're a true wireless headphone with active noise cancellation. Dakoni Audio have just released a suede pad for those headphones, and it's a completely transformative listening experience. I used those new pads on the Noble Audio headphones for my recent trip to Shenzhen for the Shenzhen International Audio Show, and the Dakoni suede pads were a noticeable upgrade both in comfort and in sound quality for me. And so if you want to upgrade your headphone or IEM game, just visit DaConeyAudio.com and use the code PassionForSound10 at the checkout to get 10% off anything you buy. For now though, let's get back to talking about the Dunu Arashis versus the FiiO FT7s. And the reason that I reached for the FiiO FT7s is that on paper they measure very similarly. Not identically, but similarly. They're also similar in terms of their size and shape as headphones, but the Arashis are clearly next level and maybe a couple of levels up in terms of build quality, fit, finish, etc. The FiiOs are excellent, the Arashis are amazing at the price. It is worth noting that the FiiO FT7s are a lighter headphone, but the Dunu Arashis feel and look much more premium and they're still very comfortable. Comparing the two sonically reveals that the FiiO FT7s are just a little bit less crispy sounding, but in all other ways, from a tonal point of view at least, they're quite similar headphones. Because of the FT7s having two different pad choices that come in the box, you can tweak them a little bit, and with the leather pads, they're a little bit more energetic in the upper mid-range than the Arashis. With the fabric pads, the FT7s are much more similar to the Arashi's sound. Either way, despite some subtle differences, the tunings are very similar between these two. But importantly, they're not the same. Where the Arashis are significantly better, as they should be for the money, is that they deliver a tighter and more focused sonic image. I didn't feel like the soundstage was specifically bigger or deeper or anything like that between these two, so much as just that the imaging got so much tighter from the Arashis. It makes each instrument more clearly defined in space and more separate from everything else. I feel like the Arashis also justify their high price tag by resolving just a little bit more detail and a touch more nuance in the sound. To me, it sounds like the drivers in the Arashis are just a little bit more technically capable than the ones in the FT7s. And again, they should be for the price. The Arashis cost significantly more. And so with that in mind, it was time for a more cost-appropriate comparison. One of the tracks I used for this comparison was Red Virgin Soil by Agnes Obel, or Obel. It has a wonderful sense of spatial placement within the soundstage, and both the Arashis and the Arya Unveiled delivered a wonderfully focused placement and positioning of each of those interesting sounds. The staging is quite similar between these two, as I'd earlier suspected, with everything being quite laterally placed without a great deal of forward projection. But also in both cases here, the separation of all those sounds within that fairly lateral plane is so good that you don't feel like you're lacking that sense of depth. It doesn't feel congested or closed in any way because each instrument has its very own clearly defined place in space. Where things start to get a little bit interesting and starts to differentiate these two is that the Arya Unveiled do have more treble energy than the Arashis. And that can result in a sound that seems like you're getting more detail, and it can also seem to increase the precision of the focus of each individual sound in space. At the same time, it sounded like the Arya Unveiled might have delivered just a little bit more tactility in the bass on a track like Red Virgin Soil. Having said all that though, I wasn't convinced that I necessarily preferred the Arya Unveiled across the board, and swapping to Homemade Dynamite by Lord revealed one of the potential downsides of the Arya Unveiled. On some tracks, the Arya Unveiled can be a little bit fatiguing, for me at least, and that's due to the fact that they are noticeably brighter than the Arashis. So depending on your listening preferences and your source chain, the Arya Unveiled could be too much. The Arashi might be just a little tiny bit more intimate with its staging compared to the Arya Unveiled, but across a wide range of tracks, I felt like the Arashis was actually more tonally balanced, a more natural overall tuning. And so if you like to listen to a wide range of genres and you're not picky about the recording quality of the tracks you're listening to, the Arashis can actually be more forgiving and consistently enjoyable across all of those tracks. And then on top of that, as I listened to both of these headphones more and more, I started to wonder if maybe the seemingly improved technicalities from the Arya Unveiled is more about their increased treble brightness. In other words, I don't know that they're technically a better driver, so much as a tuning that emphasizes detail a little bit more. Another way of saying that is that I think the Arashis are also a very capable headphone that's probably about on the same level as the Arya Unveiled, but they haven't been tuned in such a way that they're flexing their technicalities. And so we could finish this video right here with a strong recommendation of the Dunu Arashis. But you might be wondering, as I was, given the current pricing of things, how they compare to the HiFiMan HE1000SE. the HE1000SE used to cost a lot more than the Arashis do. These days, with the release of the HE1000 Unveiled, not so much. You can now get the HE1000SE for just a few $100s more than the Dunu Arashis. And this time, I felt like I could clearly hear a technical superiority from the HE1000SEs. In other words, it wasn't just about tuning anymore. However, the HE1000SE is a significantly brighter headphone once again than the Dunu Arashi, and that does contribute to the sense of technical performance. At the same time, just like with the Arya Unveiled, it can also contribute to the HE1000SEs coming across too bright and sometimes fatiguing. To my ears, the HE1000SEs are technically superior to the Arashis, but sometimes less enjoyable than the Arashis because of that brighter tuning. They are a little bit more resolving of details than the Arashis, and I think they produce even more separation and a slightly larger soundstage than the Arashis do as well. However, I think that many people will prefer the tonality, or the tonal balance if you like, of the Dunu Arashis. I also think that the Dunu Arashis look and feel significantly more premium than any of the HiFiMan headphones, which is not a knock on HiFiMan so much as huge praise for the Dunu Arashis. No matter how you look at it, I believe the Dunu Arashis have immediately justified their price to sit in that $1,000 to $2,000 range of fantastic hi-fi headphones. They look brilliant, they feel brilliant, both in the hand and on the head, and they sound brilliant too. Dunu have clearly hit the ground running when it comes to designing headphones, and that's exciting because they've got 3 more models coming in the future months, and all of them, based on the prototypes I heard at the Shenzhen International Audio Show, are going to be equally as good as these, at different price points, but my point is build quality and general tuning is excellent from all 3 of them. And so make sure you hit the subscribe button if you want to know more about those upcoming headphones. I'll be talking about them briefly in my video about the Shenzhen Audio Show. But for now, if you want a pair of Arashis in your life, and trust me, you do, there's a link in the description down below where you can go and buy a pair. Of course, if you do prefer a slightly brighter tuning and maybe a more technical performing headphone, then you should definitely watch my video that I've pinned at the end here, telling you why I think the Arya Unveiled is the best tuned HiFiMan headphone so far. So watch that one next, but for now, a huge thanks to YouTube channel members, also to channel Patreon members, and of course to those of you who leave super thanks on videos like this one. And until next time, happy listening, be kind to each other, and I'll see you here again soon on Passion for Sound.